Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matt Fruman, the second vice chair of the Transportation Planning Board. This is my maiden venture in chairing one of these meetings, so bear with me. But with that, I call the Transportation Planning Board's May 21 meeting to order. We have several members participating in person and some virtually as well. Those participating virtual, in the event of any disruption to your audio or video connection, please email or text staff. You will find the contact information in the email we received from Conti last week. I will briefly review the process we will follow for today's hybrid meeting. We will start with a roll call of board and confirm that we have a quorum. After that, we will accept comments from the public. During agenda items, I will have presenters complete their briefing and then we'll turn to members for questions or comments. I will call on members by jurisdiction. For items that require a vote, after the presentation of the item, I will make a motion to adopt the resolution and seek a second to that motion. Please state your name and jurisdiction when you second the motion. After that, I will invite comments and questions on the motion. For the vote, I will seek only nays and abstentions and will take the votes from the rest of the members present as yes. Those participating virtually, please use the raised hand icon and staff will make a note and help me call on you. Since it is easier to see you, I will first call on members here in person and then those online. Lynn and Conti, please help me identify members online in case I am unable to see them here on the screen. Lynn, would you please call out the roll?
Great, thank you, Chair Fruman. So I'm going to state the name of your jurisdiction or your agency, and if you could state your name, that would be great. We're also paying attention to the participant list as well, so we should be able to capture everyone there. All right, I'm going to start off with the District of Columbia, DC Council Charles Allen. DC Council Christina Henderson.
Heather Edelman
DC
here
Heather.
right now.
DC Council Matt Fruman.
Present.
Thank you. DC Department of Transportation.
Meredith Sonia.
DC Office of Planning.
Rebecca Schwartzman, present.
Rebecca, I see it. Thank you. Moving on to Maryland, City of Bowie. Charles County.
Jason Groff, present.
College Park.
Denise Mitchell, present.
I did see Mayor Mitchell, so thank you. Frederick County.
Mark Mishler, present.
Mark Mishler, yep, thank you. City of Frederick.
Present.
So we're not hearing them. I'm not hearing them. Okay. Can someone online just say hi for me for just a second, just to make sure we can hear you?
Sound check.
Hello. Okay, cool. We got it now. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Last one I said was City of Frederick, and Kelly, thank you. So moving on to City of Gaithersburg.
Neil Harris here.
Got it. City of Greenbelt.
Kristen Weaver is here.
Thank you. City of Laurel.
Armin Safaka here.
Thank you for being in person. Montgomery County.
Carolyn Balcom.
Thank you.
Corey Pitt.
And Corey. Gotcha. Thanks, Corey. Prince George's County.
Here, Victor Weisberg.
Thanks. Anyone else from Prince George's County Council yet? I believe Mr. Olson was planning to participate virtually, so we'll keep an eye out for him. City of Rockville.
Monique Ashton, present.
Thank you. Tacoma Park.
Amy Weselick, present.
Thank you. Maryland Department of Transportation.
Drew Morrison, present.
Thanks. Maryland House of Delegates.
Mark Corman.
Gotcha. Maryland Senate. Okay, moving on to Virginia, City of Alexandria.
Kanick, present.
Thanks, Kanick. Arlington County.
Susan Cunningham, present.
Thank you. City of Fairfax.
Tom, present.
Thanks, Tom. Fairfax County.
Walter Alcorn, present.
Thanks. Falls Church.
Here in person.
Thanks, David. Loudoun County.
Vice Chair Mike Turner's on.
Thank you. City of Manassas.
Sonia Vázquez Luna, presente.
Gotcha, thanks. Is Ashley here? Moving on to Prince William County.
Megan Landis, present.
Thanks, Megan. Anyone else from Prince William County? Okay. Virginia Department of Transportation.
Maria Sinner, present.
Thanks, Maria. Anyone else? Okay. Virginia House of Delegates.
Delegate David Reed, present.
Thank you. Virginia Senate. I know Senator Boysko was on her way, so we'll just keep an eye out. Moving on to WMATA.
Allison Davis, present.
Thanks, Allison. And now our ex officio members, Federal Highway Administration.
Present.
Thanks. I see both Lamin and Janine. Federal Transit Administration.
Hi, Dan Koenig, Federal Transit Administration.
Thanks, Dan. All right. National Capital Planning Commission.
Hi, Michael Weil in person and CPC.
Thank you. Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. And National Park Service.
Hi, Laurel Hammock here for MPS.
Thanks, Laurel. Okay, and we are keeping an eye out in the chat, in the participant list. I think DDOT has joined, a few others have joined, and we'll make sure to capture your attendance. That concludes roll call. We have a quorum. Thanks.
Thank you, Lynn. Now for public comments. Given the hybrid nature of this meeting, I will first recognize members of the public who are here in person to come up to the podium and provide their comments. You'll have 3 minutes. After that, I will ask Lynn Erickson to summarize comments received online. A copy of the comments received online has been made available to us on the meeting web page.
Great, thanks. So in order to speak in public, people will have already signed up. I have 4 speakers signed up, and I'm going to state your names so you know what order to go up in, and we'll invite you to the podium, and we'll have it timed, and we'll make sure that the microphone is on. So our public speakers are Janet Gallant, Barbara Sufel, Jessica Hart, and Terry Fitzgerald. So Janet, would you please come to the podium?
Hello, I'm one of the coordinators of don'twiden270.org. Our organization is part of a broad coalition that strongly opposes private for-profit toll lanes on the Woodrow Wilson Bridge and in Prince George's County. In the near future, VDOT will be asking that you, the voting members of the TPB, approve the Southside toll lanes, even though you won't have essential information you've requested and need. When you vote on whether to include this project in Visualize 2050, there are 5 major things you won't know. First, you won't know how and at what enormous cost the Southside toll lanes could be removed to make way for the Blue Line. All VDOT says is that enforceable guarantees will be included in its P3 contract. 2, you won't know how the toll lanes would impact traffic on secondary roads in Virginia and Maryland. VDOT says it can't do key traffic analyses until after the NEPA process is complete. 3, when you vote, you won't know if and how toll revenues would be shared with Maryland. VDOT says that won't be determined until P3 contract negotiations. 4, you'll be voting without knowing the full content and substance of the Southside environmental assessment. VDOT is not publicly sharing its detailed analyses and mitigation plans until information sessions in late 2025. Late 2025 is also when VDOT says it will respond to the public comments it has received. And finally, 5, which is critically important. When you vote, you won't know how other, less costly, less destructive, more forward-looking alternatives would have stacked up. VDOT chose to study only private, for-profit toll lane options. You and the public you represent won't know if, for example, the innovative congestive management techniques that MDOT used so successfully on lower I-270 might help in the South Side project area. Instead of forcing the TPB to vote without key information, VDOT can slow its South Side process, finish its analyses, study alternatives, and offer the TPB and public a new and fully documented way forward. If VDOT chooses not to do that, we urge the TPB to vote against including the South Side Toll Lane project in Visualize 2050. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was perfect timing. All right, next up, we have Barbara Sofel.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Sofel with Citizens Against Beltway Expansion. We urge the board to reject the Southside Lanes project. In its presentation to the public and to the board last month, VDOT did not present information on the impact of the toll lanes on ancillary roads, such as Maryland Route 210, US Route 1, Telegraph Road, and Van Dorn Street. In fact, VDOT won't provide any analysis of the impacts on other roads until after the board votes on the project in December. The TPB should insist that VDOT provide an analysis of the impact on these local roads before it votes on the project. This is especially critical for Route 210, which is already known as the highway of death due to car crashes and pedestrian fatalities. With respect to the traffic on the Beltway, I want to draw on the experience in Virginia. In 2012, VDOT opened toll lanes from Springfield to Old Dominion Drive. 2 years later, the Virginia Office of Public-Private Partnerships reported that the congestion caused by the merging of the toll lane traffic into the general lanes at Old Dominion Drive caused a 2.5-mile backup during rush hour. The South Side lanes would cause a similar backup in Oxon Hill, where these toll lanes would end. VDOT did not study alternatives, as Janet mentioned, including a future extension of Metro Rail. While Metro is not ready to move forward with the Blue Line extension at this time, space on the bridge must be preserved. VDOT claims that it would give up toll lanes if Metro moves forward with rail in the future. This is not believable. VDOT has the power to veto a WMATA project across the bridge, and it would be folly to think that they won't use that veto to preserve the toll lanes. The public is not persuaded that toll lanes are the answer. Polling by VDOT found that the public prefers transit and carpool options over toll lanes. When presented with options, the public chose toll lanes as the last option. Only when VDOT presented the toll lanes as the only option did the public show a preference for toll lanes. Thank you. And again, we urge the board to reject the South Side lanes.
Thank you.
Great. Next up, we have Jessica Hart.
My name is Sam Trumbull, and I'm not Jessica Hart, but she's not here yet, so I have her statement and would like to speak on her behalf. My name is Sam Trumbull, and I'm testifying on behalf of the DC chapter of Families for Safe Streets. Our mission is to confront the preventable epidemic of traffic violence by advocating for life-saving changes and providing support to those who've been impacted by crashes. I was seriously injured while biking in 2012. I had life-changing injuries that involved spending 29 days in the hospital, undergoing 6 orthopedic and 4 dental surgeries. I'll be joined today by Jessica, whose daughter Allie was killed while riding her bike in a DC crosswalk in 2021, and Paige Hanley, whose uncle was killed while biking in Chicago suburbs 1 year ago. Our growing membership in the National Capital Region extends to across chapters in DC, Fairfax County, Arlington County, City of Alexandria, Montgomery County, and hopefully soon Prince George's County. In 2021, the year that Jessica's daughter Allie was killed, 40 people were killed on DC streets, 43 in Montgomery County, 129 in Prince George's County, and 104 in Northern Virginia. The regional numbers increase in the ensuing years. There are Maryland residents traveling in DC like Jemiah Williams and Andy Carreño, people on roads that cross jurisdictions, Jane Bloom and Therese Duddick Taffer on Connecticut Avenue, and Anthony Shaw on the notoriously dangerous Southern Avenue. These are people living their lives, as we all do, just crisscrossing the region to get to work or school, to see family or friends, and every one of those people should still be alive today. Traffic crashes are not accidents. They're preventable through policy changes, infrastructure improvements, and a true commitment to implementing the safe system approach. No loss of life in traffic crashes is acceptable or inevitable. In our region, one of us dies nearly every day, and thousands of our neighbors are injured by vehicular crashes each year. Let me ask you, who here has been personally impacted by a traffic crash? These are fathers, mothers, children, neighbors whose lives are cut short by preventable crashes, communities and families who now have to have avoidable trauma reverberating through their lives. You can read more specifics in our submitted written testimony, but please allow me to address a few areas where the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments has a unique opportunity to demonstrate bold regional leadership. We respectfully ask the COG to embrace a more vocal and visible leadership role in championing safe streets for our entire region, recognizing that we live regionally and across jurisdictional lines. Center the experience of those personally impacted, prioritize safety over speed, and coordinate regional efforts to implement proven safety countermeasures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then last up, we have Dr. Terry Fitzgerald.
Members of the Transportation Planning Board, I'm Dr. Terry Fitzgerald speaking on behalf of Chesapeake Physicians for Social Responsibility. Chesapeake Physicians for Social Responsibility is a statewide Maryland organization of physicians and other health professionals and supporters with a mission to address the existential public health threats of nuclear weapons, the climate crisis, and issues of pollution and toxic chemicals. Our concerns, I speak here in opposition to the I-495 South Side Express Lanes project. Our concerns about this project are several. First, it is entirely predictable that widening of 495 as proposed will only move the problem to the Oxon Hill area, where ending the so-called express lanes will result in congestion, increased traffic on local roads, and increased pollution in that area. We know very well that this increased pollution, small particulate matter, and volatile organic compounds results in increased heart and lung disease. In addition, it can be predicted that local roads will become less safe because of increased traffic as drivers seek to avoid the congestion on 495. These local impacts are themselves of great importance, but I also want to address a broader issue of the impact of increased greenhouse gases caused by increased vehicle miles traveled. It is, I'm sure you are quite familiar with the concept of induced demand. If you build more lanes, you will have more traffic, period. More traffic means more pollution and more greenhouse gases when even when the vehicles are moving at good speeds. It is a bit of a nuisance to have someone bring this up when people are just talking about getting to and from work and other places more easily. But this is serious stuff. We are not just talking about inconveniences. The massive fires and hurricanes we've seen in our country are only part of the picture. Droughts, heat emergencies, Desertification in some regions, floods, and sea level rise in other areas are already resulting in mass migrations that destabilize nations and trigger wars. What we do here in Maryland and in Virginia matter in ways that we tend to ignore. We must ultimately face the fact that it is not possible to highway ourselves out of congestion, pollution, and the climate crisis. Instead of seeking ways to make our automobiles happier, we should be considering the big picture of how we help people move from place to place and how we plan urban areas to begin with. Increased transit options are fundamental to solving these problems. That's why the extra space was put on the Woodrow Wilson Bridge in the first place. The many millions of dollars for more lanes would be much better spent on rail, for example. Our model and of principle of public health is we must prevent what we cannot cure. That's why we are here urging you not to see increased lanes on 495 as the solution to anything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, everyone. So I'd like to go through the online comments at this point. So between noon Monday, April 14th, and noon Tuesday, May 20th, the TPB received 5 letters, 1 comment in the general comment box, and 259 comments submitted via email. A summary, as well as all of the comments, can be found on our meeting page. So I'll briefly summarize them now. Janet Gallant, Barbara Sofel, and Jessica Hart, who you just heard from, well, Jessica's substitute. All of their materials are online and you can read them for yourselves. In addition, Virginia Senate State Majority Leader Scott Survell wrote a letter stating that his constituents attended the meetings held by VDOT on the I-495 Southside Express Lanes study. He overwhelmingly expressed disapproval of the project, citing his concerns with the traffic implications on I-495 and secondary roads, environmental impacts, and limiting future options for multimodal transit. He writes, residents living within the Mixing Bowl and the Potomac, as well as the state of Maryland, oppose it. He notes that the additional lanes on the Woodrow Wilson Bridge were reserved for transit pursuant to a federal highway record of decision in 2000. He remains unconvinced that VDOT is adequately considering these issues and concludes that the project is not ready to be included in the region's transportation plan. Patricia Jackman from the Maryland Coalition for Responsible Transit writes to urge the exclusion of the Southside Express lanes from Visualize 2050, stating that while WMATA is prioritizing bus improvements currently, space on the bridge must be preserved for future Metro Rail expansion. They write they are not confident in VDOT's assurances that toll lanes could be converted and that Virginia would use their veto to preserve the toll lanes. They ask that the option of extending the blue line not be put at risk. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the email campaigns. The TPB received 259 emails from Wednesday, April 23rd to noon on Tuesday. These email campaigns included content urging the TPB to reject the currently proposed I-495 Express Lane project and content urging the TPB to include the proposed project. The emails were generated from email writing software with some capacity to tailor the comments. They are all included in your meeting materials. Of the 259 emails, there were 4 comments urging the board to vote to remove the I-495 Southside Express Toll Lanes project from Visualize 2050, calling on VDOT to provide more information to impacted jurisdictions and to fairly evaluate other alternatives such as shoulder or bus HOV with carpool and transit expansion. Looking at impacts to local arterials and the cost of removing hot lanes to accommodate Metro Rail. The email claims that VDOT has been biased from the start and that the officials should not be making such decisions based on incomplete information. The TPB received an additional 255 emails from Wednesday until yesterday from community members urging support of the I-495 Express Lanes project. Notable was the number of emails that appeared to originate in Prince George's County. There were 5 variations of content. Southside Beltway improvements will alleviate congestion and traffic jams. Southside Beltway improvements project is needed. Please improve the Capitol Beltway. Please move forward with the Southside Beltway improvements and support the Southside Beltway improvements. All form emails were similar in content, stating that there has been success with the express lanes in Northern Virginia, and Prince George's County residents would see similar benefits, and that transit systems are experiencing financial constraints, and this project is an opportunity to allocate more funds to transit in Prince George's County. The forms also mention congestion relief and ongoing collaboration between Virginia and Prince George's County. As I mentioned, all of these comments can be found on our meeting page, and that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. We will now move to the second item on our agenda. The approval of the April 15th, 2025 meeting minutes. We've been provided with a written summary of this. I trust members have reviewed the minutes. I move that we adopt the minutes of the April 15th, 2025 meeting as provided. May I please have a second to the motion? Please state your name and jurisdiction as you second the motion.
Second, Drew Morrison, MDOT.
Are there any, thank you. Are there any corrections or additions to the meeting minutes from the District of Columbia? Maryland? Virginia? Other agencies? The minutes are adopted. Thank you. Next, technical committee report. We have a written summary of the March 7th, 2025 meeting. I will ask Victor Weisberg, the chair of the technical committee, if he would like to highlight any part of his report.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Victor Weisberg with Prince George's County, and this chair of the technical committee. The technical committee met on Friday, May the 2nd, and with your materials, there is a link to all the materials that were furnished at that meeting. Some of the issues and items that we discussed were the TLC, technical assistant recipients. So we got a preview of those. The approval of the FY 2029-26 Regional Roadway Safety Program and those candidates. And a briefing on Visualize 2050, and those are the highlights. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Vic from the District of Columbia? Maryland? Virginia? Other agencies? Okay, thank you, Vic. Now to the Community Advisory Committee report. We have a written summary of the March 13th, 2025 meeting. I will ask Chair Daniel Peppernick if he would highlight the report for us. Daniel?
Thank you, Chair. The CAC met in a hybrid format on May 15th. The meeting featured a DMV Moves discussion and presentations on the air conformity analysis and congestion management process. The committee also discussed the TPB TIP forum meeting that's scheduled for October the 9th. For DMV Moves, staff provided an update. We discussed the capital funding gap and how the funding would be used. Members had questions on the rail automation investment and the regional bus priority network. The schedule was also discussed, and the CAC will continue to keep DMV Moves on our monthly agenda in order to provide timely feedback to the effort. We also received an overview of the Clean Air Act and transportation conformity. We understand this is a critical part of the Visualize 2050 plan update process, and members wanted to better understand the region's current status and the analysis that is performed, as well as how to communicate about it. There were a number of questions, including how decisions on where to locate monitoring stations were made, how the public may be able to comment on the projects to be included in the analysis. And we also received a briefing on TPB's congestion management process, where we learned from staff that congestion is like art. You can't assume that people look at it the same way. We're very interested in learning more about the planned enhancements to make tools more interactive, user-friendly, and accessible, and expressed interest in having and offer to follow up with feedback on a demonstration of any of the enhancements that can be provided once they are available. Over the past 3 months, Chair, the CAC has gotten briefings on the major components of the Visualize 2050 plan, including an orientation in March, an overview of the Unified Planning Work Program, congestion management, conformity, and some critical components of the long-range planning, such as bicycle and pedestrian planning. We're hopeful that this will serve as a good foundation for the further activity of the committee as we turn the corner of the last steps in the long-range plan. The CAC also discussed the Transportation Improvement Program Forum, and we've shifted our in-person meeting to be on October 9th to co-host that public meeting. I invite the TPB members to read the CAC report for more details about our discussions. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Daniel from the District of Columbia? I'm going to ask one, which is, if congestion is like art, people see it differently. Is that to suggest that there's a cadre of people who think congestion is beautiful? Or I'm curious what you're getting at with that intriguing comment.
I don't think beautiful was the term that was used. I think it's a difference between, in one person's view, it's a bane. It's negative. In others, they view it as a sign of economic vitality.
Okay. Any other questions from the district? Maryland? Virginia?
Miss Ashton has a question online.
My apologies, Miss Ashton.
Thank you. I was looking at the CAC report, and there was a question about the ability to monitor air quality and whether the EPA has any impact. And I just wanted to note, I did notice, even in our own climate action planning efforts, that there have been some impacts on what we're able to monitor. I know that there was an environmental justice screening tool that allowed jurisdictions to look at air quality in their area and underserved communities, and that is noted as down at this time. So I just wanted to flag one thing that has an impact on air quality monitoring, or at least data gathering. And I'd be happy to drop that in the chat.
Yeah, please. There was not a lot of elaboration on that. I think staff was going to get back to the committee on exactly what impacts they could discover.
All right.
Mr. Chair, hi, Dave Snyder from City of Falls Church. I serve on a subcommittee that's working on a resource document for particularly impacted regions, areas of our region. And the issue of monitoring has been discussed widely there. I think we all want more of it, and more of it on a localized level. But we've been advised that there are monetary as well as regulatory constraints. So that's active consideration, and I think the view is shared that we'd like to have more monitoring throughout the region, especially the most seriously impacted areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to be sure, any further questions from Maryland? Virginia? Other agencies? All right. Thank you, Daniel. Now to the steering committee actions and report of the director. Next report, we'll have a report from our director, Kanti Srikanth. We have a written report. Kanti, would you please review the report for us?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'll be happy to answer any of the questions on my report or other items. You have a copy of that report. The steering committee met on May 2nd. It approved 2 amendments to our TIP. The details are on pages through to 15. The VDOT amendment added about $43 million in state and local funds for the preliminary engineering of the Braddock Road widening project. This is a small stretch of a larger project in Loudoun County. And in the Second Amendment, Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation amended the TIP to add about $3.5 million in Federal Transit Administration's State of Good Repair funds and some local funds to make improvements at the VRE Amtrak station in the city of Alexandria. In the letters sent and received on pages 17 through 21, you will see copies of TPB's letter of support to Prince William County's request for congressional, I'm sorry, let me step back. On pages 17 through 21, you will see copies of the TPB's input into the congressional stakeholders portal on the federal surface transportation reauthorization work activity that is just getting underway. This was discussed at the board meeting last month. And also during that last month's meeting, the board agreed to provide the finalized TPB's reauthorization priority principles to this region's congressional delegation, requesting them to consider incorporating these regional priorities in their input to a separate portal that has been set up exclusively for members of the Congress to provide their input. The list of the region's congressional delegations who received a copy of the TPB's reauthorization priority principles is on page 23. On page 25 is a letter from the Federal Transit Administration to the TPB and the District Department of Transportation, confirming that the FTA had transferred the funding that it provides to TPB to the Federal Highways account. This is a request that had been made by the District Department of Transportation and the TPB earlier this year. This is the funding that will become available for TPB's upcoming fiscal year. On pages 26 through 34 are copies of TPB's letter of support for Prince William County's request for congressionally delegated funding for 3 projects in the county. One is a pedestrian bridge in North Woodbridge Town Center. Another one is a trail crossing of Joplin Road across I-95. And the third project is a Route 15 trail crossing at Catharpin Creek. Letters of support to Charles County's request for congressional directed funds for the Van Gogh project was provided last month. Turning to announcements and updates, staff is happy to inform that the TPB's Access for All committee roster has been reformatted and enhanced for the 2025-2026 period. Staff had undertaken this renewed effort to enhance the membership, and now we are glad to report that with the 20 member organizations that are on the committee, plus 13 ex officio members, we have representation from most all of the traditionally underserved communities, be it older adults, people with disabilities, low-income population, people with limited English proficiency. You can find the detailed roster on pages 37 through 41. The last item in my report, it was also mentioned during the public comment period, and Lynn's summary of the comments that were received pertains to the Virginia's I-495 Southside Express Lanes project. Last month, during the board's meeting, there were questions posed by some members of the board, as well as the public. The public comments were submitted to us in writing. Following the board meeting, board member Mr. Eric Olson from Prince George's County followed up by submitting in written form the questions he had asked of VDOT during the meeting. All of these questions were shared with the Virginia Department of Transportation. They have since provided their response to these questions, which might be found on pages 43 through 48. While the written responses recognize Mr. Olson's letter, reviewing it gives me the impression that some of the comments that were received at the board meeting have also been addressed here. We also received a letter from Virginia State Senator Suravel on this project that we have also shared with Virginia Department of Transportation. Yeah, I recognize that Ms. Sinner from VDOT is on the line. If VDOT wishes to say anything further, that'll be great. But that was all I have in terms of my review. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Conti. Are there any questions for Conti from?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, Eric Olson from Prince George's County.
Proceed.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank Conti and Lynn and the staff at TPB, as well as VDOT, who took the time to provide responses to the questions that Prince George's County requested. Look forward to the opportunity for more discussion on those responses. So thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
know this is not the time for that, but thank you.
All
Mr.
right.
Chair, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, Maria
Yes.
Sinner with VDOT. To Mr. Canti's report, I wanted to add that VDOT staff also reviewed the comments, the public comments received at last TPB and previous meetings. We have put them in various theme buckets, and as well as the comments received through the public meetings that we have held. And the summary of all of those responses to the various themes have been provided to this board.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Let's go through to see if there are other questions and comments, starting first with the District of Columbia. Maryland. Virginia. And other agencies. All right, wonderful. We come
Thank
to
you.
the next section, which is the chairman's remarks. And I understand we might be joined at this point. So this meeting comes in the context of a terrible loss to the region of Congressman Connolly, and Chair James Walkinshaw was pulled away from this meeting, but is able to join for this period for chairman's remarks. So, Mr. Walkinshaw.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sorry not to be with you all today. Thank you for stepping in, and it's a hard day for all of us in Northern Virginia and across the region who love Jerry Connolly. A terrible loss for our community and our region. And, you know, one of my purposes moving forward will be to ensure that, you know, we all remember the impacts that he had in so many different ways. And for you all on TPB, I just wanted to share, you know, his accomplishments and commitment on transportation issues. His tenure on the Board of Supervisors, especially, was really the turning point for us in Fairfax County, away from the traditional auto dependent mindset and mode that we had had for many decades towards the pedestrian friendly, multimodal, transit oriented future that has brought so many benefits to us. He was the champion of our first bicycle master plan in Fairfax County that we are working to implement to this day. He, over the course of a 30-year career, fought for the extension of the Silver Line, going all the way back to 1995 when he represented the Providence District on the Board of Supervisors, a time when most of the experts had written off the possibility of extending Metro to Dulles Airport. He never gave up on it and pushed and pushed and pushed and was key to getting it across the finish line. He, as chairman of the Board of Supervisors, stitched together what is now the Jerry Connolly Cross County Trail, a 40-plus mile trail that takes you from the Potomac River to the Occoquan River across almost all of Fairfax County, and on and on and on. He was really committed to making Fairfax County in our region an easier place to get around. And I just want to share with the entire COG team and TPB team. He loved all of you and had so much admiration and appreciation for the work you do and the importance of regionalism to all of us in our region. And I just wanted to share that with you and remind all of us that his work continues, and especially at TPB and COG, we now have a responsibility to carry forward the things that he fought for and helped to deliver for our region. So I'm sorry I won't be able to join you all for the rest of the meeting, but wanted to share that and thank you for all of the support and well wishes and prayers for him and his family over the last several months. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Walkinshaw. There may be others who would like to chime in. I think Mr. Snyder.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Superintendent Walkinshaw said just things in ways which is impossible to add on to. But I did want to say this. Falls Church is in an adjoining congressional district, so I never had the opportunity to vote for Jerry Connolly, but I had the opportunity to work with him over 30 years. And in a very real sense, everyone in this room and all of our constituents were represented by Jerry Connolly and what he did regionally and what he did nationally. And most recently, as a member of Congress, not only did he continue to represent the best interests of this region, but he represented the best interests of the nation in speaking truth to power. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, it's Supervisor Alcorn.
Proceed.
Yeah, just to build on what James said, I know, this really is a loss for the region. Jerry did so much on so many levels. James really articulated it so well, but James also just to acknowledge, the loss I know that you and your family are experiencing now, given your long history with Congressman Connolly. We're thinking about you too.
Thank you. Others?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Senator Jennifer Boysko, Virginia. I just wanted to add my comments of, enormous loss for our community. I am I do live in the 11th district and worked with Congressman Connolly for more than 2 decades, and just an enormous loss for all of us. But what an amazing life he lived and used his power and ability to really shape what our community looks like now. And I will be forever grateful for his contributions to not only our area, but to the entire nation and his work internationally as well. It's just a really difficult day today, but appreciate Supervisor Walkinshaw and Supervisor Alcorn for providing some comments. And we're all gonna be mourning today, but know that our world is a better place because of Jerry Connolly.
Thank you. Others? So I will add, as a resident of the District of Columbia, Jerry Connolly is a dear friend to the District of Columbia. We are so grateful for everything that he's done, not just for Virginia, but for the region and for the District of Columbia. And personally, I've ridden on some of those bike trails and I'm personally grateful for the difference that he's made in so many different ways. It's chairman's remarks, and there are chairman's remarks that are written, and shall I proceed to read them? Okay. Members are aware that we have been partnering with COG in the DMV Moves initiative, which is a collective effort by the region's elected and senior appointed officials to examine ways in which we can significantly improve the transit service in this region. Metro, VRE, and MARC, all rail systems, metro and local bus systems. This work started exactly 1 year ago this month. Several of us on this board are serving on the DMV Moves task force, and Charles Allen, who serves on this board, is also the vice chair of the COPG. is serving as the co-chair of the task force. This effort has reached a very important milestone in that the task force at its meeting last Friday has agreed to explore generating new funding in the range of $500 million to $600 million each year for regional transit, and it is exploring ways in which the different transit providers in this region can increase their collaboration and resource sharing to bring in service and cost efficiencies. This is very critical for the TPP since the public transportation is a policy priority and the key to improving mobility and accessibility both at present and in the future. It is this type of collective work at the highest levels which takes a considerable time that informs our long-range plans. While the results of this effort will not be reflected in Visualize 2050 that we will be adopting later this year, it will support some of the operations and maintenance assumptions in Visualize 2050, and the results of DMV moves will be more fully reflected in the next update of our long-range plan. I look forward to having the board briefed about this in the coming months. We will now take up the two action items we have for today. Item 7, approval of the FY26 TLC technical assistance recipients. Under this item, we are being asked to consider the recommendations of the selection committee on awarding technical assistance to projects within some of our jurisdictions. We have Michael Wheel, who represents the National Capital Planning Commission on the board, with our staff, Vicky Codulo, TPB Grants Program Manager, who will share information about the TLC program, as well as recommended projects for the TLC program for FY26. Vicky?
Good afternoon. My name is Victoria Codulo, and I am the Grants and Technical Assistance Program Manager. And it's a pleasure to talk about TLC with the TPB this afternoon. First, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Weil of NCPC to share a few thoughts.
Hi, thank you for having me. Mike Weil, National Capital Planning Commission. I'm our representative here on the TPB. This was my first year on the Transportation Land Use Connections selection panel, and I enjoyed myself. Before I hand over the podium to Vicky, I'd like to make just a few observations as a first year on the selection committee. First of all, we had a pretty wide range of great applications this year. I think we had 16 applications in total. And our committee is recommending 5 of these projects to the planning board for approval here at today's meeting. Second of all, the projects submitted were very diverse. The projects such as expanding bike share, trail improvements, supplemental pedestrian and bicycle planning guidebook, and curbless street design standards, just to give you some examples of the wide range of projects that we considered. And it's interesting to see how the different jurisdictions are each tackling the challenge of becoming less auto-dependent and working towards achieving our regional vision and planning goals. And finally, it's refreshing to see as a professional planner, we typically review projects that last, that are going to take a number of years to implement and construct and are worth many millions of dollars. And it was a fun exercise for me to serve on the selection committee in reviewing these kind of smaller scale projects that are going to be relatively quick to implement, but still, making a huge difference to this region. So with that, I'm really proud of the work that our committee accomplished this year. And now I'd like to hand the podium back over to Vicky, and she will now share some additional details about the TLC program and our selected projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Since 2007, the TLC program has funded 186 projects for just about $8 million throughout the region. These projects promote vibrant communities, active transportation, and safer streets. The TLC program has its origins in regional planning. 20 years ago, the TPB was looking at big picture questions, thinking about what if more development was concentrated in mixed use, or what if we built more transit and sidewalks and bike paths? The analysis found that those kinds of improvements could really make a difference. When we went out to the public at the time, they had really practical concerns. They understood the benefits of smart growth, but they also reminded us that local challenges can make or break these types of projects. People told us that mixed-use development needs to be walkable, transit needs to serve community needs, and biking needs to feel safe. And we also saw that our members are doing a lot of great planning work at a variety of different levels, small cities, big counties, and et cetera. But local planners could often use a little extra help to make good projects even better, or to explore innovative ideas, or to move important but sometimes non-urgent work off of the back burner. Shown here on the screen, you can see the database we maintain of all TLC projects that have been completed in the past or are ongoing. You can download reports from all of our past projects here, and it's a really great resource for anyone looking for more information about the program. So we use a simple model. Every year, we select a handful of local projects and hire consultants to do the work. The projects are pretty quick. We turn them around in about 6 to 8 months, and they're also quite small, as Mike mentioned earlier. This year's projects were funded for up to $80,000 for planning studies and $100,000 for design or preliminary engineering. The panel for solicitation this year, it took place over a 3-month period. On the screen, you'll see that we received 16 applications, again, as Mike mentioned, for a total of $1 million, or $1,310,000, pardon, for funding requests. We received 8 applications from Virginia, 7 from Maryland, and 1 from DC. The panel came up with a list of, our selection panel consisted of folks that are professionals in the industry, as well as staff, and they looked at priorities that have been established by the TPB, as well as their qualitative assessment of the projects, and that led to a total score. And this panel met twice on April 11th and April 22nd, and those discussions led to a list of 5 projects that are being recommended for funding. The 5 projects that were selected, as I mentioned earlier, they were looking at COG priorities. Among that were priorities such as being near activity centers, being near or adjacent to high-capacity transit, or in or near our TAFAs, and all support or are directly in or near our National Capital Trail Network. So here you'll see a chart of the projects that are being recommended for funding this year, that list of 5 with their funding amounts, and I will get into details on each of these projects next. So first up, we have the Curbless Street Design Specification Project for the District of Columbia. The district's project aims to create more flexible pedestrian spaces for programming through curbless streets. The goal is to create a 30% curbless street design specification to support their goal of creating pedestrian-oriented spaces and activating medium and high-density mixed-use corridors. Up next is the Montgomery County Capital Bike Share Improvement Study. For this project, the county will evaluate existing bike share operations and provide recommendations for growing the bike share network. This project will focus on the Maryland 355 corridor from Rockville to Bethesda and will include market research, financial analysis, and policy research. The project will serve as a strategic guide, and it will focus on long-range implementation and operation strategies, and it will identify funding needs, revenue sources, and it will prioritize bike share locations and identify equipment and personnel needs. Up next is the East-West Bikeway. For this project, Prince George's County will evaluate the feasibility of a bike route that would connect to 5 existing shared use paths, including the Sligo Creek Trail, the Paint Branch Trail, the Indian Creek Trail, and the Anacostia River Trail. The proposed bike route would start at the WBNA Trail in Lanham and would connect to the Northwest Branch Trail in Lewisdale. The project will consist of a combination of shared use paths and on-road bikeways. And lastly, this project will serve 2 MARC stations, 2 Metro Rail stations, and several Purple Line stations. The next project is in the city of Alexandria and is the Beauregard Trail Feasibility Study Project. This project will create concept designs and cost estimates for a trail on North Beauregard Street. Design features may include a shared use path, improvements to crosswalks or new crosswalks, median islands, concrete improvements, signal timing, and landscaping. This project will provide improved bike ped infrastructure for community members accessing housing, schools, and commercial uses in this area, such as the Northern Virginia Community College, which is located along Beauregard. The last project is in Fairfax County and is the West Park Drive Safety Project. This design project will advance the county's bike master plan through a traffic study and 30% design of a protected bike facility on West Park Drive in Tysons, Virginia. The project will support efforts to improve bike and pedestrian safety, and it will provide a direct connection to the Tysons Metro Rail Station North entrance and the future Leesburg Pike Trail, which is a part of the National Capital Trail Network. Today, we're seeking your approval to fund these projects. Our next steps would be then to get started on the consultant selection process, and then we would begin working on the projects in a few months in September. I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone that participated in the process, our selection panel, Doug Noble, Claire Randall, Lisa Rother, Mike Farrell, John Swanson, Mike Weil, and John Swanson, who facilitated the group discussion and led us to these final recommendations. Thank you, and I will take any questions.
Thank you, Michael, Vicki, for the presentation, and to all those who served on the selection committee. Clearly an impressive set of projects. We do not have a resolution to adopt. We will be asked to approve or defer action on the recommendations. Before I call on a vote, though, are there any questions or comments for Michael or Vicki? From the District of Columbia? Maryland?
Just would like to express appreciation for the addition of the East-West Bikeway project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm actually excited about that one too. I love that trail network there. Virginia? Other agencies? Okay, so for the vote then, are there any nays or abstentions from the District of Columbia? Maryland? Virginia? Other agencies? All right, well, thank you. With that, I take it the projects have been approved, and we will move to the second and last action item for today. The safety activities update and approval of the FY26 Regional Roadway Safety Program projects. Next up will be asked to consider and approve the recommendations of the selection panel on safety projects and studies in some of our member jurisdictions that would receive TPB's technical assistance grants. Before we do that, we will have Janie Nam, our staff, share an update on the recent safety program activities we are engaged in. After that, we will have Vicki Codulo, TPP Grants Manager, to share recommended projects for the Regional Roadway Safety Program for FY26. Janie?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here today with my colleague, Vicki Codulo, to share a brief safety update and also the projects that have been recommended for funding for the FY26 cycle of the Regional Roadway Safety Program. I'll begin the presentation first by providing a brief update on our safety activities and then turn things over to Vicki, who will highlight the individual projects recommended for funding this year. As you may remember, last fall, the TPB held its Regional Roadway Safety Summit to discuss potential actions the board would undertake to address roadway safety in the region. Several recommendations came out of that discussion, and staff shared a proposed timeline at the beginning of the year for implementing those actions. That work plan included several studies that we would initiate this spring and continue into the FY26 work program, which begins July 1st. And I'll be discussing the status of those studies in the next few slides. And I'll also add that we worked this past February and March to ensure that those studies were reflected in the FY26 UPWP and budget so that we had sufficient resources to conduct them. So the next couple of slides summarize the current status of the actions that we plan to begin this spring. One activity that was proposed was to join the USDOT Allies in Action campaign, and this is now complete. The TPB's participation in the campaign was confirmed in January, and will continue to execute TPB safety initiatives that we committed to as part of our pledge. Another activity that was proposed during the summit was to inventory and benchmark the safety activities of member jurisdictions relative to the TPP's safety resolution, which was adopted in 2020. We plan to use consultant assistance to develop the study and have begun the procurement process. We hope to be able to get a consultant under contract in the coming weeks so that we can begin work. And we're also following a similar procurement process for our second study, which is a white paper to understand the impact of automated traffic enforcement devices on safety outcomes. We've actually bundled the procurement of this white paper with the previous study to create administrative efficiencies. So it has a similar timeline. And again, we're hoping to begin kicking off the project in the next few weeks. And then finally, one of the more significant proposals from the summit was to explore a mutual agreement for automated traffic enforcement reciprocity between DC, Maryland, and Virginia. This effort is being led by COG with support from TPB staff. Since the summit, we've held discussions with staff from the district's Highway Safety Office and Vision Zero Office, and plan to coordinate with our safety partners in Maryland and Virginia next. The TPB further plans to support COG by developing a white paper that will review the legislative landscape for automated traffic enforcement, as well as opportunities and constraints for reciprocity. We plan to fund the white paper using grant funds and have submitted an application for funding at the end of January and are awaiting that award decision. Beyond the Safety Summit activities, we continue to pursue other activities that are part of our core safety program. Currently, we are conducting an update of our regional safety study, which was last published in 2020. We've been working on it since the spring of 2024 with the help of a consultant and are currently wrapping up data analysis and drafting the report. And we hope to complete it this summer with the hope of circling back to this board to present that report. Our Street Smart campaign activities took place across the region during the month of April. You may have seen the ads on buses and the street teams walking billboards. And our project selections for the Regional Roadway Safety Program were completed in April as well. And at this point, I'll turn things over to Vicki to walk us through this year's projects.
Thank you, Janie, and hello again. Again, my name is Vicki Cadulo, and I'm the Grants and Technical Assistance Program Manager. And I'm really pleased to share with you all today the Regional Roadway Safety Program projects that have been recommended for funding by the selection panel this year. I'll begin by giving a quick overview of the program, followed by brief descriptions of the projects recommended for funding, and we'll end with next steps. The Regional Roadway Safety Program was established in 2020 to support TPB member jurisdictions in developing and implementing projects that improve safety outcomes across the region. Since its inception just 5 years ago, the program has funded 28 projects totaling $1.8 or so million. And these projects have spanned a variety of topics and disciplines beyond planning and engineering of roadways, such as education campaigns and toolkits, complete streets, local road safety plans, guidelines and standards, and more. For this latest RSP cycle, staff solicited applications from member jurisdictions over a 3-month period. It overlapped with the TLC period that I mentioned earlier. We received 11 applications totaling $890,000 in funding requests. 3 applications were also submitted for funding through TLC. We had 1 application from DC, 3 from Maryland jurisdictions, and 7 from Virginia jurisdictions. Following the application period, a panel consisting of safety officials from MDOT, DDOT, and VDOT, as well as staff, reviewed the submissions and convened to identify the projects to recommend for TPB approval, as well as the funding level of each project. Each selection panel member scored the applications in 2 ways. First, based on how well the project addressed program priorities, and second, a qualitative score based on the panelists' professional expertise. These 2 scores were then combined into a total score, and the panelists then convened to discuss their evaluations and come to a consensus as to which projects to recommend for funding. This table shows the projects identified by the selection panel for funding as well as their funding amounts. The total program funding this year was $320,000. And as I mentioned earlier, several projects were submitted for TLC, including 1 project submitted by the District of Columbia. That project was selected for funding through TLC. Because of this, the panel, which included a representative from DDOT, determined the best use of RRSP funding between Maryland and Virginia. The panel recommended selecting 1 Maryland and 1 Virginia project and then determining their next highest ranked projects from there. And now I will touch on some details of the 4 recommended projects. First up is the Rollins-Twinbrook Complete Streets Feasibility Study for the City of Rockville. This project will develop alternatives for redesigning Rollins Avenue and Twinbrook Parkway to support multimodal transportation, including bike lanes, pedestrian crossing improvements, traffic calming measures, bus stop enhancements, and wider sidewalks. The Rollins-Twinbrook corridor is in a regional activity center and provides access to the Twinbrook Metro Rail Station, adjacent neighborhoods, a park and community center, commercial assets, bus stops, and the planned National Capital Trail Network Trail, and a BRT line along Maryland 355. This project area has a history of crashes, including over 60 injury crashes over the past 10 years. Up next is the Braddock Road Safety Improvements Project for the City of Alexandria. This project will develop conceptual design alternatives for safety improvements on Braddock Road between Quaker Lane and North Van Dorn Street in response to an increase of pedestrian traffic, with many students walking between the updated Minnie Howard campus in Alexandria City High School and the main campus. The project will include existing conditions analysis, traffic analysis, and community outreach. Lastly, we have the Central Annandale pedestrian, 2 more. Third up, we have the Central Annandale pedestrian safety improvements at Tom Davis Drive project for Fairfax County. This project will develop engineering designs for permitting and construction for an innovative traffic calming project for Tom Davis Drive in Annandale. This county-managed street connects 2 major corridors and provides access to community and retail service assets. The project will develop designs for traffic calming measures such as protected bike lanes, painted meanders, and chicanes to enhance pedestrian and cyclist safety. The county is also planning an asphalt mural project developed in partnership with the surrounding community and businesses to create a culturally relevant sense of place and as a supplement to the project's traffic safety improvements. And the census tract where the project is located has the highest rate of pedestrian fatalities in Fairfax County. Lastly is the high school pedestrian safety improvement study for Prince William County. This project will conduct a planning study to identify and prioritize locations near county high schools for safety improvements based on data-driven criteria, including student population density and walk sheds, crash reports, and traffic counts. The project will recommend proven pedestrian safety improvements to develop safe routes to school projects from implementation, as well as incorporation into the county's traffic safety action plan. Again, these are the projects the selection panel recommends for the board's approval for FY26. Upon approval, similarly to TLC, staff will then coordinate with jurisdictions to finalize their scopes and begin the consultant selection process. And again, similarly to TLC, we'll kick the projects off in the fall. And again, I'd like to thank our selection panel. I'll take any questions. Janie.
Thank you, Janie and Vicky for the presentation and to all those who served on the selection committee. I'm very pleased that our transportation agencies are taking full advantage of this grant to continue to work on improving roadway safety in our region, which is a top priority for the TPB. I'm also grateful to you, Vicky, for explaining why there wasn't a District of Columbia project, because that was jumped off the page to me as a question. So thank you for preempting that. We don't have a resolution to adopt. We will be asked to approve or defer action on the recommendations. Before I call on the vote, are there any questions or comments for Janie or Vicky? Mr. Snyder.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to reflect briefly on the highway safety efforts of the Transportation Planning Board. Each year, we're called upon to estimate the fatalities and injuries throughout our region, and this is a depressing and frustrating activity which we're required by law to do. The TPB several years ago decided that that was simply not enough, and that what we wanted to do is use whatever power, whatever authority, and whatever funding TPP has available to it to go after and combat this unacceptable level of carnage on our highways. And so you heard a good summary of the kinds of things that we as a collective body have been doing. I know we're constantly looking for new things to do. We don't have the authority to enact highway safety laws. We don't have the authority to enforce them, but we have the authority and the ability to collect data, bring together the best minds in the region, and work with our different jurisdictions to improve highway safety throughout the region. And I think the TPB is very much engaged in that effort. So I just wanted to make those general comments about the presentation we heard today. The white papers and the other sources of information and data will be very much looked forward to and used throughout the region. So a big thanks to COG staff and every member of the COG board that has supported these efforts. We know we have a lot more to do, and we're doing we're doing what we can now and are constantly looking for what else we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to echo the gratitude for some of the reports that are coming on automated traffic enforcement and reciprocity. That is important work. There was another question or comment, and I apologize, I can't see your, if you'd say your name and jurisdiction.
Drew Morrison with Maryland Department of Transportation. A couple of items. Well, thank you for the supporting a very exciting project in the city of Rockville. Interested to learn a little bit more about Montgomery County's proposal related to AI and conflict detection, as well as Frederick's project. So maybe my colleagues there can highlight some pieces. But in terms of the larger safety policy conversation, do want to flag that Secretary Wiedefeld has been very concerned with where we are on safety. He knows the importance of reciprocity as a regional issue. There's a lot of unique regulatory and legal situations in Maryland that make our ability to dive into that a little more complicated than the unified jurisdiction of the district, but we do want to be a part of that regional conversation, and he's convened an internal work group to work through some of those challenges. That's part of a larger Serious About Safety initiative that he's kicking off following legislative session for us to go do more and dive deeper. So look forward to joining that conversation.
Wonderful. Any other questions or comments? I think Monique Ashton.
Yeah, I'll just echo my comments and just say, personally in the city, we've been tracking where the most serious fatalities are, and really appreciate the support for this project because we have seen loss of life along intersections like this, and this will help us improve safety.
Thank you. And I thought I saw a hand up from the mayor of Rockville, although maybe the hand's gone down.
That's me. Same.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. For the vote then, are there any nays or abstentions from the District of Columbia? Maryland? Virginia? Other agencies? All right, with that, I think the recommendations have been approved, and now we will turn to the first of two informational items for today. Next up is the Regional Activity Centers update. We'll be briefed on the most recent update to COG's Regional Activity Centers. I understand these were approved by the COG board last month. Regional Activity Centers is a growth management strategy that has been an integral element of the TPB's regional transportation plans for a long time. We will have our staff, Tim Kanan, provide some background on the transportation linkage to regional activity centers, and then have Greg Goodwin, COG's Community Planning and Services staff, brief us on the updates that were just approved. Tim?
Thank you, Chair Fruman, members of the TPB. It's a pleasure to be here before you today. There's a memo that accompanied this packet, provides a little bit more background information, and I'm pleased to be joined by my colleague, Greg Goodwin, on the COG staff, who will get into the details of the activity centers. But I do want to start that we are a long-range planning agency, and we tend to count things in decades. So several decades ago, this board, the TPB, determined and asserted that good land use planning is a good regional transportation planning strategy. There's a lot of congestion that was occurring at the time and a lot of congestion that was forecasted for the future. And it was asserted that if we do good, smart land use planning, that will help address that and mitigate the growing effects of congestion in the region. So the TPB's work program does call for coordinating regional land use and transportation planning, and that coordination would hopefully result in more favorable development patterns that would help optimize the investments that this board is committing to making and promote mobility and accessibility. As part of this work program that we have to coordinate regional transportation and land use planning, we work very closely with the Council of Governments under the oversight of COG's Planning Director's Technical Advisory Committee. And some of the primary activities that occurs within that space are developing the cooperative forecasts of population, households, and employment, and developing the regional activity centers, which we're here to discuss today. And we use these data items to conduct a lot of the analysis that looks at that nexus in the relationship of land use and transportation in this region. The concept of regional activity centers was first proposed by TPB. This came to be because of a recommendation of a request by TPB in the late 1990s, calling in its vision for the use of regional activity centers to help develop an interconnected transportation system that would enhance the quality of life and promote a strong and vibrant economy. And this was articulated in the TPB vision at the time. Activity centers would be walkable, contain a mix of jobs, housing, services, and recreation. In doing so, that would help alleviate and reduce some of the automobile dependence in the region. It would also go a long way toward optimizing the investment that we're making on infrastructure and assist with prioritizing locations for not just federal agencies, but any kind of large corporate presence or commercial development. And it helps to prioritize the investments that we're making in this region. So although this is a request that was made by TPB, it was an action that was taken by the COG board and the planning directors to establish these activity centers to help us move in that direction on the transportation planning side. And fast forwarding a couple decades later, our current regional transportation plan, the Visualized 2045, which is the most recently adopted, does have an aspirational element called Bring Jobs and Housing Closer Together. And that calls for encouraging future housing and employment growth in regional activity centers. And that using those activity centers helps us measure the progress we're making toward that aspiration. And we're able to measure that, look at our cooperative forecasts, and determine whether what we're planning for in the future in terms of future jobs, in terms of future residents and households, and where they're going to be located, helps us assert and understand whether or not we're making progress in advancing those goals. TPB uses activity centers in several additional ways as well. We just heard from Vicki and Janie on our technical assistance grant programs. We use activity centers as part of the selection criteria. When projects are proposed for these technical assistance grant programs, we consider whether or not projects are located or support in any way the aspirations of regional activity centers. When we prepare our long-range transportation plans and transportation improvement program, we make a call for projects with a project solicitation process. And in that, we ask if the projects that are being proposed are located in or near regional activity centers or advance the concept of activity centers. We track the region's progress against the policy goals and initiatives and looking at future growth and whether or not we're adding and developing in the way that we envision to help address some of these transportation concerns that we have. We conduct performance analysis of our long-range transportation plan, and part of that performance analysis looks at how well activity centers would be performing today compared to the future, and whether the proposed transportation investments would help promote the successful performance of those areas. We also continue to use activity centers as well as other types of topologies such as high capacity transit areas and things like that when we conduct regional land use and transportation analysis to better understand, again, that nexus of regional land use and transportation planning. So I wanted to provide a little bit of a background on why this is important to TPB. This is a work product of COG. It's approved by the COG board. It's done under the oversight of the planning directors, but it's used very much by TPB, and it's vital to the work that we do. So I wanted to provide that background context. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Greg, who can walk us through a little bit more on the specifics of the Regional Activity Center approval process.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Greg Goodwin. I'm with the COG staff. Just to echo some of the statements and comments that Tim has just made, just to kind of reiterate the importance of the coordination of land use and transportation planning in this process, but it's also the coordination between COG, TPB staff, and our local government staffs as well. We could not have accomplished or supported this map without the excellent work of our member jurisdictions in this process. So just to go through several slides, COG's regional activity centers are locations that will accommodate future growth and support the Region Forward vision goals of prosperity, accessibility, livability, and sustainability. Regional activity centers can exist in many forms. Some have included urban centers, priority growth areas, traditional towns, and transit hubs. And as you can see in the map that is in our room in this meeting space, we do have 145 activity centers spread throughout the region, as far north as Frederick, all the way down to Charles County, all the way out to Prince William and Prince George's County as well. Again, to reiterate Tim's statement, the Transportation Planning Board first tasked COG staff with identifying regional activity centers back in 1998. And again, this was a better part of a strategy to coordinate transportation and land use planning. Staff first selected activity centers back in 1999, and the COG board has approved 3 updates since that time, 2002, 2007, and 2013. And again, just to kind of provide kind of a graphic revision or view of what we have approved and what has been adopted in the past. The map on the left is the activity centers that were approved using the 6.2 cooperative forecast. Back in 2002, 58 activity centers were identified and were selected. The map in the middle is the 2007 update, which relied on the round 7 cooperative forecast. And at that time, 59 activity centers were selected and adopted. And finally, the map on the right was the last update to the Regional Activity Center back in 2013. And again, 141 regional activity centers were adopted or selected using the Round 8.0 cooperative forecast. As a departure from the previous maps, we used the so-called illustrative dot or circle to better represent our activity centers compared to the polygon of the activity center back in the earlier updates in 2002 and 2007. This regional activity center selection has been based on the Round 10 cooperative forecast. And just to remind everyone, the cooperative forecast for Round 10 was developed during 2022 and was adopted by the COG Board of Directors in June of 2023. This update uses the same technical eligibility criteria that was used in the last update in 2013. But the difference is that we used current plans and data provided by our local governments. COG staff conducted the technical analysis. The Planning Director's Technical Advisory Committee approved the selection criteria and guided COG staff throughout their technical work. COG staff met one-on-one with planners in each local jurisdiction to solicit local know-how and to get feedback and to ensure that the Regional Activity Center selection was consistent with local planning and priorities. At its March 2025 committee meeting, the Planning Director's Technical Advisory Committee approved the new Round 10 Activity Centers map. And as you will see on the map, 145 centers were selected, each represented on the map as an equally sized map half-mile circle. And again, it was approved by the COG Board of Directors last week on May 14th. Again, just to go over the selection or the core attributes of how we evaluated these activity centers. It was approved by the Planning Director's Technical Advisory Committee and is based on 6 attributes. And these are over 2 sets of different types of attributes, core and secondary attributes. But this slide shows the core attributes shown that the potential regional activity center must have. 1, it must be identified in either the jurisdiction's comprehensive plan or local land use plan, and it must have a person's density based on the cooperative forecast for the year 2050 to be above the median person density for that jurisdiction. The second lens or the second scan that we used are these secondary attributes. In addition, the plan had to encourage some sort of mixed-use development, and based on zoning, based on comprehensive plans, and based on conversations with local planning departments is how we developed this attribute or this criteria. In addition to mixed-use development, activity centers could also contain a high-capacity transit station in the year 2050. It could be a metro rail, light rail, streetcar, or a bus rapid transit. 3, using information from the Center for Neighborhood Technology, the H&T Affordability Index, there was an additional attribute in which housing and transportation cost for the typical household in the potential regional activity center must be no higher than 45% of the median regional income. And lastly, the final secondary criteria was that intersection density in the regional activity centers must have at least 55 intersections per square mile. So in order to conclude this presentation, wanted to provide some basic statistics as we analyze our activity centers. And again, these centers were approved by the COG board last week. So again, 145 activity centers have been approved in this version of the map compared to 141 back in 2012 and 2013. In terms of the total square miles of the regional activity centers, it was roughly for this round 216 square miles. And that is only 6% of the COG region's 3,459 total square miles. So again, these activity centers only represent a very small portion of the land area of the region. And by the year 2050, these regional activity centers will host 238 high-capacity transit stations, and that is 73% of the planned high-capacity transit stations in the region that are planned for 2050. These centers are forecasted to grow at a faster rate than the region as a whole. In the Round 10 cooperative forecast for our region, employment in the selected regional activity centers is to grow by 35% from 2020 to 2050, and that is compared to 24% outside of the regional activity centers. And finally, the population in these centers is expected to grow by 53% compared to 15% outside the centers. So essentially, what we are seeing is that our activity centers are becoming more compact and are more dense than they were back in the 2012-2013 version of the activity center map. So that concludes my presentation, and I believe both Tim and I would be happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you both. Are there any questions or comments for Tim or Greg from the District of Columbia? Maryland? Yes?
Drew Morrison from MDOT. Question, very good slide 2. Good land use planning is effective regional transportation planning, and good speaking to how we try to make these regional activity centers matter. But what is the hook? How do we use, I see in the PED bike or in the TLC, we flag all in or near activity centers. I would hope they would all be in activity centers. How do we take whatever resources we control here and reinforce the good land use planning through our the decisions that TPB makes?
I'm happy to answer that, Drew. As we've noted, TPB, from a financial or funding assistance perspective, our resources are rather limited. The funding we have can only be used for planning, not for operations, design, maintenance. So within that, our technical assistance grant programs all use regional activity centers as one of the criteria. We have also tried to recognize the high capacity transit station linkages with regional activity centers. So we have added the high capacity transit station concept to our grant programs. So those are the ways in which the TPB is directly assisting or putting resources to further promote this concept. The real effectiveness really comes from the local jurisdictions and the state actions on both land use and transportation. When the regional activity centers concept was being developed in late 1998, 1999, it was acknowledged or accepted that there were 3 C's that underpin a regional activity center. The first one was consolidated. The second one was connectivity. And the third C was circulation. Consolidated was representing mixed use and high density land use within those activity centers, where we would consolidate jobs and housing and other activities, whether it is entertainment or shopping. So consolidated land use in a high density form. The connection is where the transportation investment came from the TPB's perspective. It wasn't enough just to have these regional activity centers located throughout the region. We had to connect them with high capacity transit. as opposed to those were all connected by roadways. But the roadways were where we were forecasting significant congestion, loss of mobility and accessibility. So we said, okay, transportation investment decision makers, please prioritize investing in high-capacity transit that connects regional activity centers. And the third one was circulation. We recognized if these are going to be mixed-use, high-density development geographic areas, it becomes very critical to provide for active modes of transportation such as walk and bike. So internal circulation is a priority. So again, the call was for local and state transportation investment decision makers to prioritize investing in bike ped. That is the reason why you saw in that slide a couple of things that TPB has been doing. Every time we update our long-range plan, we examine is the projected growth in population and employment, how much of that is happening within activity centers, how much of that is happening outside of activity centers. And then we try to assess what transportation investments are being made connecting these regional activity centers or within regional activity centers. So those are the ways in which we are trying to bring data and analysis from transportation, land use, both combination, to the decision makers. But I will acknowledge that within the TPB's work activity, our insight into the investments that go into the bike ped kinds of projects is not as robust because they don't always rise up to the level of being in a TIP, or they may not always have federal funding. So that is one area where we are looking to see how we can get a little bit more data and bring that to bear to the TPB's decision makers.
Thank you, Conte. Other questions from Maryland? Questions from Virginia?
Susan Cunningham from Arlington.
Yes.
I just wanted to say a huge thank you for this. I know this is a core program that's been super incredibly important for the region, and glad to see it continuing. I have one question, which is how or if or when we might be incorporating sort of the change in work patterns and commute patterns into this work. Has that disrupted it or changed it at all, or is there a 2.0 somewhere down the road that we need to think about, or is it staying evergreen even in those changes?
I can answer that from two different ways. The regional activity center designations themselves are re-examined and redesignated every time the region gets together to re-examine our growth projections. So, and we do that once every 4 years, 5 years timeframe, where we take a look at the national economy, and within that context, how is the region's economy? What are the region's prospects for job growth and employment and population growth? So every time we do that, we do take that. So when the planning directors last year developed the cooperative forecast round 10.0, it was a post-COVID activity. So this time the planning directors did something additional that they had not done the last time, 4 or 5 years before. And that was examining how might the growth trend in our region vary because of COVID, acknowledging that when that work was being done in 2013, 2014, there was no consensus that we have arrived at a new normal. We knew we would have a new normal, but there was no consensus that this is it, we have arrived. It was seen as a transitionary period. And so the planning directors have done their best to acknowledge and accommodate into those projections how this might be, how our region might look. Of course, starting January, there's the normal that we had began to change a little bit. So now we are again curious to see where that will go from the region's perspective, from the federal employment perspective, from the federal procurement perspective. So there's always a 3 to 4 year revisitation of that where this is happening. In terms of your other question, in terms of looking at the data within these regional activity centers in terms of changes in employment or in population and other economic activity, either because of COVID or other things happening in the region, that is something that Tim Kanani is our data and research program director. We are looking at what kinds of big data is available. But the problem there is big data is available at a high level, but this necessarily requires us to look at a small geographic level. So that's a good question. We haven't figured out exactly how to do that, but it is on our radar.
Great, and I'm sure at least some of the planning directors, if not all, would be thrilled to help you with that local data element as well. So look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. It looked like, Greg, did you want to chime in on that question as well?
The only thing that I would add is that, currently we're actively working on a round 10.1 cooperative forecast. And I would expect when we start the process for a major round, probably within the next year or two, then some of those questions will also be answered. We'll know more about potential reductions in the federal workforce. We'll know much more 6 months to a year from now before we start on that.
All right, thank you very much. Other questions from Virginia? Other agencies? Okay, with that, we will move to our second and last informational item for the day, the Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Planning Update. While we've been focused on updating the region's multimodal long-range plan, we recognize there are various elements in this comprehensive plan. One such element is the region's bicycle and pedestrian plan. We will now hear from our staff, Michael Farrell, on the planned work to update this bike ped plan and about the recently updated National Capital Trail Network, which is a subset of the regional bike ped plan. Michael?
Of course. Yes. Thank you very much. And so I guess I'm going to talk about really what we're going to do over the next fiscal year. And we really have, we have two updates in mind. Both the National Capital Trail Network, which was last updated in February of 2024, and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan, which was last updated in May of 2022. So that's we're going to try to keep that on a 4-year update cycle versus the National Capital Trail Network, which being a TPB priority we're trying to keep on a 2-year update cycle. So beyond those major products, there's other things that we do in bicycle and pedestrian planning. We have a standing subcommittee of the TPB Technical Committee, which has an important role for information exchange, advisory roles to the various other TPB subcommittees and planning areas on topics bicycle and pedestrian. We also monitor the non-motorized accommodations or recommendations in the Transportation Improvement Program and in the project InfoTrack. So we, based on that, we can tell roughly, actually pretty accurately, how many of these projects include some kind of bicycle and pedestrian accommodation. And the most recent results are that we're looking pretty good in that sense. Like most of the projects in the region that are being built do have some kind of bicycle and pedestrian accommodation. We also look at things like emerging modes, like very often something that is brand new that our jurisdictions don't have a lot of experience with, like say capital bike share, docked bike share back in the beginning. It comes to our subcommittee, pretty early on because, a lot of, especially historically, a lot of our a lot of the staffers at the jurisdictional level, historically it's been like one or two man shops, where they, so they're very anxious to hear what's going on in other jurisdictions. And also, when something new hits them, like docked bike share, like dockless bike share, I mean, there's a desire to find out, what their neighbors are doing, get lessons and, coordinate where they can. So then we also look at the subcommittee also monitors the Street Smart program and provides advice for that on the safety aspects. The Street Smart program, it does have its own advisory group, which consists of representatives of the funding agencies which direct it. And so technically it's not within, for the most part, not within the UPWP as far as, bike ped planning area, but it is an important thing that we do for bike and ped safety. And we typically try to conduct at least 2 workshops on typically design type workshops within the year. For example, we're doing a workshop on micromobility on June 30th. We anticipate doing more over fiscal year 2026. So what is the National Capital Trail Network? It is a long-distance, continuous network of low-stress, mostly off-road bicycle and pedestrian facilities. It's designed for people of all ages and abilities. It's meant to provide healthy, low-stress access to open space, inexpensive, reliable transportation, and serve nearly all the TPB priority areas and most people and jobs in the region. And it is one of the TPB's 7 transportation initiatives from Visualize. So it's been around for a little while already. Back in 2018, the TPB directed staff to extend what had been called the Bicycle Beltway, which is just a circumferential route around the center of the region, to the rest of the region. And in 2020, the TPB adopted the network, which had been created, and it directed staff to give priority to projects that would help complete that network. Most recent update was 2024. And so this is the map. It's existing and planned are the different colors. And then there is also a web page where you can zoom in, click on a particular project, and it'll give you basic information on what it is. So one of the things we're trying to do is track our project towards completion. Right now, we're looking at about, right now we're looking at about 27 miles per year are being built, which is not an extremely rapid rate of progress, but nonetheless, we saw that within the scope of about 3 years, we did manage to get from 45-55 to about 50-50 in terms of planned versus existing projects. And so doing a buffer analysis on the trail network, we find that a very high percentage of the equity emphasis areas, the activity centers, high capacity transit and transit access focus areas are located within a half a mile of a National Capital Trail Network facility. And, same thing for the population, not quite as great, but still a strong majority of population and employment is located within half a mile of one of these facilities. So as I mentioned, a 2-year update cycle, it will be incorporated into the bicycle and pedestrian plan that I'm about to talk about. So most recent version of the bicycle and pedestrian plan for the National Capital Region was adopted in May of 2022. This plan is primarily
summary and advisory in character. It's a summation of everything that our jurisdictions are doing. And, it contains really a lot more information than what you see in Visualize. Visualize has some bike and ped information. We go into a lot more detail on bicycling and walking trends, safety, complete streets practices, and best and recommended practices, as well as evolving facility designs. And it's primarily an information product rather than a prioritization product. So these are some of the things that we've incorporated into the plan. And this is the map. We call it the 2045 network because that was the time horizon for the plan back when it was back in May of 2022. We will create another version of this map that will, of course, have a 2050 time horizon. And the plan does reside as well on the TPB resources and applications page. This is another interactive map that you can zoom in. It contains some of the analytics, the buffer analyses, and so forth. And so you can get more information in a readily digestible fashion here. And this was just an exercise we did to try to compare it to the National Capital Trail Network. It does incorporate because this is a planned only project, it's more forward looking, whereas the National Capital Trail Network is both existing and planned. It's a little bit of apples and oranges. However, the low stress network is basically the same types of facilities as might be eligible for the National Capital Trail Network. So something that is like a protected bike lane or a separated path. And so we're looking to adopt it end of 2026 to try to keep us on a 4-year cycle. And of course, we will try to get input from all the relevant committees, as well as looking into possibilities for things that we can do to improve the legibility and public engagement and so forth. So that's what I've got.
Thank you very much. I wonder if there are any questions. We'll start with the District of Columbia. I have a question. I hope we didn't rush you too much. I think this is an important project, and our clock is going to run out. But am I to understand that there's 1,880 planned miles but none of those are built at this point?
Let's see, it depends on which product you're talking about. The National Capital Trail Network is meant to be a prioritized network. So it's much smaller than what you see in, that's not even, the low stress network is not even the entire bicycle and pedestrian plan network. The bicycle and pedestrian plan network is bigger than that. This is just pulling out those planned projects which could conceivably be eligible to be part of the National Capital Trail Network because they're of a facility type. So, for example, an unprotected bike lane, it could be in the bicycle and pedestrian plan, but it can't be in the National Capital Trail Network because it's not an eligible facility type. And the low stress network, that's entirely planned projects. None of those have been built. Whereas the National Capital Trail Network has, 779 miles of planned, 644 of existing, as it stood as of 2 years ago.
I really appreciate it. I mean, it speaks to the ambition of the plan, it seems quite ambitious, which is wonderful. Any other questions from the District of Columbia? Maryland. Virginia. Other agencies? And my clock still says 2 p.m. And with that, we conclude today's meeting. As we adjourn, I will note that the next meeting will be on Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. Thank you for everybody coming.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.